What's up, everyone? So, we're back into a second part of following up with the shakeup at Xbox. So, more information came out. Um, Allegedly, if you haven't already seen it, but allegedly, the departure of Phil Spencer going into retirement wasn't supposed to be announced until Monday, being today. However, according to information, there was leaks happening that Phil Spencer was about to retire, and um, IGN was about to drop an article over all this. So Xbox and Microsoft decided we got to get ahead of this. We got to be dropping information on this. We can't wait till Monday. We got to do it now. And so that's why all that chaos broke out. Because when they dropped it, everyone's just like, what the heck? What is happening? And so then everyone starts speculating things. Well, then not only that, then you also have Sarah Bond coming out saying, I'm resigning. And everyone's like, what? And then when we get the new appointed CEO, everyone's like, oh my goodness, the world is nigh. The end of the world is nigh. And so it's been very interesting to see some of the stuff that's coming out. Do keep in mind, though, that some of the stuff is leaks. They're not all coming from primary sources for say, or maybe they are. We don't know. But yeah, as far as someone's coming out saying, this is what life was like under so and so, we just don't know. We're just taking what we're given and talking about it from that. So one one of the things we'll be doing in this is we're going to go over watch this video that's discussing about some of these leaks. A couple of things that is going to be talked about in this video is allegedly what it was like working under Sarah Bond, how several people just aren't really shedding tears over her resignation, and other things going on behind the scenes. And it was really interesting when I watched this because it reminded me a couple of my own experiences with working with people who were not the greatest of bosses. I mean, boss in general is just a gnarly word. It's not a pleasant word because generally, if someone's a boss, they're behind the desk telling you what to do and elevating themselves while you're being crushed under that. A leader is someone who's in the trenches with you, fighting shoulder to shoulder with you. As they're elevated, you're elevated. As you're elevated, they're elevated. So that's the differences. I mean, like, we'll go a little bit more into that here in just a minute. But I did find this clip pretty interesting as he goes into everything that's been happening. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into that real quick here.
Titled Inside Microsoft's Big Leadership Shakeup, and he highlights a very interesting roadmap that led to Sarah Bond's departure. You know, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella and CFO Amy Hood obviously have some different ideas about the future vision. Here's what I've highlighted. The decision to overlook Bond might have surprised many Xbox fans, but for more than a dozen current and former Microsoft employees I've been speaking to, it's felt inevitable in the recent months. Spencer's decision led to months of careful successor planning. It was announced to the world on Friday, but it was supposed to be today. Microsoft was forced to announce early because it started to leak, and IGN was planning to run a story according to sources familiar with the situation. That kicked off a day of chaos, where teams inside Xbox were hearing the news first through reporters and news outlets instead of via internal memos. The team running Sarah Bond's social media accounts was so unprepared that a LinkedIn post inviting people to provide feedback about Xbox accessibility features went live just before her departure was announced.
That's true. So when I had saw the news break about all this was happening, and several YouTubers were talking about, they're like, yeah, we haven't even heard anything about Sarah Bond, so we don't even know what, like, her side of everything. And when I was seeing that, like, so I was watching, everything that I had watched was like an hour after I think the announcement broke. And then from there, I went on to Sarah Bond's LinkedIn. And there was that post about what he was just talking about. And then shortly after that post, there was the next post of her teams announcing her resignation and all this other stuff. And I was just like, so I saw the one where I was like, walking about the feedback and everything, and then shortly after that is, oh, by the way, I'm just like, what? Oh, that's interesting. Like, everything's normal. Oh, by the way, everything's not normal.
There for hours until Bond's team eventually posted her own memo.
Mm-hmm.
This was by far the most unprepared portion of the whole rollout of the new leadership. It's the fact that Sarah Bond was only mentioned in Phil Spencer's memo. Nobody else mentioned her. She had nothing prepared. There was nothing on her socials. It turned out that was because this really caught a lot of people off guard. All things considered, I think they did pretty good, but the Sarah Bond part could have been a little bit stronger. There is potentially a reason why she was left out, though. Some Xbox employees I've been speaking with, saw the writing on the wall for Bond last year. She was promoted to Xbox president in October 2023, just days after Microsoft finalized its $68.7 billion deal to acquire Activision Blizzard. Bond had been crucial in getting the deal over the line with regulators and slowly started to become the face of Xbox as Spencer took on the complicated duties of integrating a huge new business into Microsoft gaming. 6 months after Bond's promotion, Xbox executive Kareem Kodri, who reported directly to Bond, departed Microsoft and triggered another shakeup of teams inside Xbox. Kodri was key to Xbox's backwards.
So what he's about to go into is what I was talking about is that there are people who said that working with her was a bit of a nightmare. Again, these are not necessarily confirmed sources. No one has come out directly saying working with her was a nightmare, but so take it at face value. But could be potentially why she did not get the promotion, and why she likely resigned.
Compatibility support and helped bring Xbox Cloud Gaming to life as xCloud in 2019. That's one person who quit after Sarah Bond was appointed. Just weeks after Kodri departed, former Xbox Chief Marketing Officer Jarrett West also left Microsoft in June 2024. That meant the Xbox marketing team was now reporting directly to Bond. A month later, Microsoft delivered a marketing campaign that signaled people didn't need to buy an Xbox console anymore. The message was that you don't need an Xbox to play Xbox because games were available through Xbox Cloud Gaming on TVs. This was one of the worst marketing campaigns I have ever seen. I think.
Does this marketing campaign sound familiar to anybody? Of another blunder?
My reaction was a bit of confusion, just like everybody else. And we have repeatedly seen stumbles like this with their marketing campaign. When the Xbox Game Pass price increase was announced, the value proposition still wasn't there. It caused cancel Game Pass to trend on Google searches.
Yep. Did you cancel? I didn't necessarily cancel, but I did drop it from the Ultimate down to the PC. I don't really play too much on my Xbox anymore in itself. I kept the Ultimate because of the bonuses and everything, but also in those times that I wanted to play on my Xbox, I did have access to things. But otherwise, when they increased the $30, I'm like, well, my Xbox is becoming a glorified Netflix player, and I'm going to be strictly PC. And so I dropped it down to the PC. As far as the marketing blunder, so when he talked about that reminded me of another blunder for marketing of the Xbox. The Xbox One, when that when the Xbox One came out, I was working with Best Buy at the time, and in fact, I was the the guru for photography and also gaming at this time of working with Best Buy. Eventually, I became the home theater specialist, but during that time, at the launch of the Xbox One, for those of you who probably do remember this, the Xbox One was advertised and marketed as the ultimate living room accessory. It's going to play your Blu-rays. It's going to be your streaming device. It's going to You know, you'd hook up your internet, you could hook up your TV, all that stuff. So you walk inside, you're coming home from work or school, you're like, Xbox, turn on, and boom, everything turns on. It's all ready to go. Now you just gotta go sit down on your couch, grab your controller or your remote, and there you go. It was the ultimate device. Sounded cool. Probably a little ahead of its time, because nowadays people are like that with their Google and Alexa devices. Where, you know, I have friends that are like that when they're waking up in their room. They're like, Google, turn on the lights. When they're leaving, they're like, Google, turn off the lights. So maybe it was a little ahead of its time. But the biggest blunder and all that, though, outside of that, was the fact that the video game lineup for the Xbox was kind of lacking. there was more exclusives on the PlayStation at that time than there was on the Xbox. And I remember having lots of discussions of individuals going, hey, you know, you want this Xbox, right? And they're like, yeah, I mean, I like the Xbox, but there's more games on the PlayStation. I'm like, yeah, but Halo. Oh, I love Halo, but, you know, my buddies all have PlayStations. And I'm like, yeah, but you can play Call of Duty on here. I can play Call of Duty on the PlayStation. I'm like, but Halo. That was the only thing I really had to turn to, was, but Halo. Like, I love Halo. I'm a big Halo fan and everything, but that was my kind of only argument, though, was, but Halo. There wasn't really anything else. Like, all of these exclusives were coming out on PlayStation, and people are like, but I got more games lined up on, and they'll sit there and they'll look over and they're like, yeah, there's more games on the PlayStation side on the Xbox side. I'm like, all you really need is Halo. Am I wrong? But yeah, a blunder. And then comes Phil Spencer, who kind of fixes that problem.
Xbox Play Anywhere, or this is an Xbox, has been memed to death at this point. It does not resonate with people, and it's clear that the strategy was not properly in place before this was executed.
Yeah.
This was all part of the Xbox Everywhere strategy that Bond had been pursuing, a vision to move the Xbox brand beyond its roots in console hardware. Months later, the This is an Xbox campaign launched, with commercials that positioned a phone or a tablet as an Xbox instead of just a console. It was a confusing.
Don't forget your toaster can be an Xbox, and your refrigerator. That's like how people were memeing the heck out of Skyrim being re-released so many different times, to the point where it's like, even your Alexa can be a Skyrim.
Campaign, and I'm told it offended many Xbox employees internally. This is an Xbox also debuted months after Bond appeared on stage at the Bloomberg Technology Summit and announced an Xbox mobile gaming store that was supposed to launch in July 20.
If I remember correctly, this was because Epic Games had just won their lawsuit. And so I'm trying to remember, because it's been a minute, but if I remember correctly, I was watching the thing that was talking about how, like, this was huge because this was coming off the tailcoat ends of Epic winning its lawsuit against Apple, and because it was because of everything that was going on between Apple and Epic, that Xbox had like two different apps. You had like the cloud gaming app, and then you had like your Xbox app where you could do, you're like, you know, you see your ultimate stuff lined up and everything in your account or your Game Pass. So yeah, so you had the cloud, and then you had your Game Pass. But then after the lawsuit and Epic had won, Xbox retired the cloud app, merged all those features into the Xbox app, and then did the whole UI change up and everything. And the app is the way it is now. But what was supposed to happen was that you were supposed to have like this whole store thing and everything else, kind of like how Epic has their app and whatnot. It just, for some reason, hasn't come to fruition. It sounds really familiar to when 343 created the Halo Media app on the Xbox, and then that didn't really take off the way they wanted it to.
2024. It still doesn't exist almost 2 years later. You might remember that I was one of the people
And I think they were supposed to eventually merge like that side of like the Windows Store into the Xbox app, if I remember correctly, but I don't remember 100% off the top of my head.
Fasting Bond for her unprepared response while on the Bloomberg stage, because she went out there moments after they had fired thousands of employees at Microsoft, and she just did not have a great answer. She was visually shaken up and had a hard time getting through that presentation. Totally understandable as a person who maybe isn't used to going through that, but as the CEO, as the person running the company, you have to be better prepared than she was. All
And also, that's also when they were sitting and talking about how successful the Xbox Game Pass app has been, and it's doing so well, blah blah blah. And yet, then shortly after all that, they raised it to $30, and it's like, so how well is it really doing if you're raising it by up to 30?
Though attempts to redefine Xbox were clearly tied to the mobile store efforts, Microsoft still went ahead with This Is an Xbox after the store was delayed. Most of the current and former Xbox employees I've spoken to in recent days are relieved that Bond is leaving Microsoft. I've heard from multiple sources that Bond has been tough to work with.
And this is what I was talking about at the start of this recording, is that we don't like, this is someone giving had allegedly talked to former and current employees, getting their take on all this. But again, that's secondhand source. We're not hearing it from the primary, so we're not hearing from the former employees. We're not hearing from current employees saying what was it like working under Sarah Bond. So, in that sense, it could be legit. It might not be. Someone who's disgruntled with somebody, maybe they like, or they maybe the person, the employee was the problem. Maybe it wasn't necessarily the boss, but there's always, a lot of times, in a lot of cases, there's always two sides to every coin, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. I've had some pretty crappy bosses during my time working in various different industries. I mean, yeah, like the most recent industry I worked in, I had a boss that was a boss, like the nasty word. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't someone that I could look up to and be like, yeah, I'd want to follow you. I want to do everything you're saying, and da 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 da. He was someone who was more self preservation. He wanted to do whatever it took to help elevate him, and he didn't care if he crushed all his employees underneath him. Having been in the military, I understand what it's like to have good officers and officers who are all about themselves and what makes them look good. They don't care if anyone else looks good. And I even called my boss out on this, where I even told him straight up, I'm like, look, man, like, I was in the Army, like, that. And so, I had leaders that were great, and I had those who were officers, but they weren't necessarily good leaders. And you fall in that category of someone who is just not a good leader. You don't have what it takes to be a leader. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you do have what it takes, but you're not doing it. You're doing everything that makes you to be a boss, and you're not there in the trenches with us. You're not there shoulder to shoulder. You're not helping any of us employees to be elevated, which would help you be elevated. You're doing whatever makes you look good, and you don't care if we look good. You don't care if we succeed. You don't care if we prosper. You may say you do, but your actions say differently. And that's kind of what this hints at, is that, there was a lot of that. There was also, in the same sense of, it's my way or the highway kind of thing. Like, you can't, if you're not going to do it my way, then there's the door. And that was how my boss was, where it was like, you either do it my way or there's the door.
And built a team structure that meant if you didn't follow the vision or question it, you were out. Most have praised her ability to strike partnerships with companies and developers, though. I don't know if you're working in a gaming environment, if you can't listen to feedback from people close to you, negative or positive, and at least take it into account, you're setting yourself up for disaster. You have to be able to at least listen to outside perspectives versus just going in tunnel vision and making it happen.
That's one of the things I always have problems with working in corporates, is you always have those managers who don't want to listen to good ideas. You could have a great idea that could help make things really successful, and the response will be, we just don't do it that way. At one point in my life, I worked for Walmart. It was a very short tenure. I ended up quitting, leaving them when I got passed over for a management position. But I had me and my cousin that I worked with. We had came up with a bunch of different ideas that would help boost productivity and morale amongst some of the employees. We went to the management about it. And we're like, hey, here's some things you should implement. This and this and this. This is what this would do. Blah 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 blah. And the response was, "That's nice, but we just don't do that. We don't make those kind of decisions. We follow the playbook and only the playbook. Anything else outside the playbook, we just don't do." And it's like, but this would literally turn things around. Nope. What? The irony in that is that Walmart and Sam's Club idolize Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart and Sam's. So much that over in the management office, they have all these quotes of Sam Walton, of all these different things he says. And one of the quotes is on there that says, "Don't discount feedback and ideas coming from your associates. Like your best like answers to a problem could come from an associate." And here we were coming to them with all these solutions, all these ideas, and they're like, "Nope." And I'm like, "You guys need to go read those quotes for Sam Walton."
Good leaders listen and then action where they can. It sounds like Bond was just going full throttle.
In my last job, I worked in a sales position, and I had gone to my boss and I was like, "Hey, all of our uh, leads that we have in this pool of names are old. They are like 4 or 5 years old. We need fresh new leads because a lot of these people I'm calling, either the phone number is no longer active or they've moved or they no longer live either close enough or in the same state." Like, we need new leads. We need a fresh new pool. And I would tell them, like, "Hey, like, there's a sports game coming up. Let's go and table over there. Or let's go to Walmart and table over there. Or, whatever. Like, let's go, like, take a day and get new leads." And he was like, "I like the idea, and I do think maybe we could use some more fresh new leads, but we got to continue calling these numbers and showing that we need new leads." I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why do we need? Because basically he felt like we needed to continue calling and like have these high number calls to then go to the district manager and be like, "Yo, we've been calling like hundreds of phone numbers and these people they don't live nearby, they don't live in the same state. I think we should go and table." But he didn't want to do that. The funny thing is that after I ended up quitting, like I think it was like 2 months after I'd quit, he started taking the team out and they started tabling out like at Walmart and other places, and I'm like, where was that when I was there?
And couldn't stop. I wrote in December 2024 that Bond had staked her career reputation on the idea of Xbox being everywhere, across multiple platforms and devices. This also involved carefully managing
The
her image
ultimate
both
Xbox,
internally and
remember.
externally, making her
Ultimate
appear
living
to
room
be a
device.
gamer like Phil Spencer. In reality, she wasn't. I understand that Bond's strategy had been failing internally and been questioned multiple times. Bond had tried to push mobile and cloud over console to reach potentially millions more Xbox customers, but the result has been a classic case of chasing tomorrow's customers by neglecting today's.
Mm-hmm.
I have to imagine that that's not going over well with employees who stake their whole careers on building up the Xbox console and the Xbox brand, only to have somebody come in and kind of throw it all out the window. We've seen the sentiment from users, and the fact that they're saying she was difficult to work with, that's also not good. Phil Spencer's retirement has seemed inevitable to Xbox employees, particularly over the past year. In February last year, Spencer took a long vacation, and I'm told some teams had to wait weeks for sign off on some key changes. Shortly after this vacation, rumors started circulating inside Microsoft that Spencer was getting ready to retire. Microsoft was eventually forced to deny the rumors in July, claiming Spencer won't be retiring anytime soon. With Spencer's retirement official,
When I heard him talking about that, I did wonder because I don't remember there being issues, but maybe there was some issues. I don't know. I do remember he was interviewed and someone had asked the question. You know, you're getting up there in age, da da da. You've been here for like 38 years. Like, what is it look like you might be retiring anytime soon? And he laughed. He's like, no, not anytime soon. Da da da. I do wonder though, if maybe he had like a lot of PTO and he decided to cash it in or something, or maybe he had like a family emergency. Who knows? But maybe it was during that vacation time that or he started humming and hawing over the idea of retiring, but he wasn't really set on affirmative yes just yet. Could have maybe had a long conversation maybe with his spouse and talked about it. A lot of times that tends to happen for people. They go on a vacation trip somewhere and then they're like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. Like, I kind of enjoying this, not having to go to work or having to deal with the day-to-day stress. When I had a job that was like that, where I it was shortly after I had tragedy in my family, and so I was still not necessarily in the right place. I needed a job to help keep me distracted, grounded, and everything. But ultimately, I ended up losing that job, and I was super annoyed and frustrated with it. But however, I did have some friends that came into town from Arizona, and I got to hang out with them. We went on this huge like electric scooter ride through like the canyon and everything. And while I was doing that, I was like, like it's like 12 o'clock in the afternoon. A lot of people, what are they doing? They're all at work. All my former coworkers, what are they doing? They're all at work. Here I am, having fun in the sun, scootering through a canyon. Like, this is cool. Like, I kind of like this. And then after that, after that particular day, I would spend a lot of time with my family and only came home for therapy and everything. And then I would be like at my therapy sessions for a day, and I would go right back to my family's home. And when I would come back to do my therapy session, I would stop by at my apartment, freshen up and everything, and then go back to my family's home. And so I was like hardly ever home. But it was one of those things where it was like, it was so nice not having to worry about a job or anything like that, not having to be tied to an alarm clock and stressing about any kind of quota or anything. And so I almost wonder if maybe that was something that Phil Spencer was feeling. If there really isn't anything else that may cause him to have to retire, if it literally was him making that decision and it wasn't any other influences, I could see it being that, because I felt that, where I was like, yo, like, this is relaxing, like, this is great. But who knows?
Microsoft is hitting the reset button on Bond's Xbox strategy instead of embracing it further. This is the only time you can do it. If Phil was already planning to retire, you have to hit the reset button when Phil goes. And
So this is kind of like the same thing when they kind of did that with the Xbox being the ultimate living room accessory. One of the big things that was because at the time you only had, what was it? I think the only option to buy an Xbox was with a Kinect, and then they kind of rolled out some, but if you wanted a game, you had to get the one with the Kinect. If you got the one without a Kinect, you didn't get a game. You had to go buy a game to go with it. But then eventually they phased out the Kinect and everything else, and then the whole idea of the Xbox being the ultimate living room accessory kind of just faded off into history. So it's kind of like, I feel like that's kind of like a repeat in this timeline for the Xbox, is that, you know, the old leadership goes, the new leadership comes in. We're hitting that reset button. We're getting back to focus. It was like that, like when Phil Spencer came in and fixed things for Xbox. They kind of did that. They kind of had that reset, and that's kind of what's happening. Again, ideally, happen with this, where we'll have that reset. We're going to go back to focusing on Xbox, and not this is an Xbox, that's an Xbox, your water bottle is an Xbox.
That means, unfortunately, Sarah Bond's not going to be happy, and she just flat out resigned. I get why she would resign. I also understand why Microsoft would want a complete reset at that point, because honestly, it's the best place to do so. Maybe Sarah was offered a position to stay under Asha. Maybe that doesn't rub her the right way. You're talking about a board member and a high-level executive. I'm not sure that that would sit right with them, and they have enough.
So when you talk about this kind of reminded me of an assistant manager that I had. So he had been trying to get to a general manager position and got passed over several times. In fact, the location that I worked at, he tried to get, before he worked there as the assistant manager, he tried to get the general manager position when the general manager at the time was sacked. It was him, and then the guy that would become my boss, that there were a pull trying to get that position. This guy, this who was an assistant manager, was is a phenomenal person, and he does wonders, and his numbers are really good. But they ended up going with the guy that would become my boss instead. Well, then later, this guy who was the assistant manager ended up coming to that location, and everybody loved working with this assistant manager. He was phenomenal. He was great. Everyone hated my boss. My boss caused a revolving door at the place that I worked at, where so many people left. And the assistant manager was trying his best to get the boss ousted, and it just wasn't working out. And then he ended up applying for an opening at a different location, ended up getting passed over again, and then after that, he was just like, I'm out. And now works for a different company.
Money that they can just leave at any time they see fit. Now, I am really curious about what happens in the future. I am also trepidatious, as many of you are, and I'll be interested to see what ends up transpiring. Right now, I'm taking a wait-and-see approach. Microsoft Gaming CEO Asha Sharma is now promising the return of Xbox and a clear message to employees that the strategy over the past few years has not been working. I want to return to the renegade spirit that built Xbox in the first place, says Sharma.
So I like what he's about going. He's about to kind of dive in a little bit of why it makes sense that she probably got the position that she got. But the other thing is I also can see why she's making these statements about we're not going to do AI slop, this and that, because she's also hearing what people are saying. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I played Black Ops 6. We all saw what happened there. If Inigo Montoya was around, he'd be probably wanting to kill that six-fingered Santa Claus. Like,
Sharma. Xbox employees I've been speaking to have been concerned about the Sharma appointment, particularly because of her previous role as an AI executive at Microsoft. There is also concern about her lack of industry experience in entertainment and gaming. Sharma has been clear she's not a gamer, and she has spent the weekend responding to people on X and even taking game recommendations.
it is, I can see where some people would be concerned of where it's like, well, she's not a gamer and yet she's going to be head of the gaming company. Like, what? Like, are we serious? Like, don't get me wrong. So I think that people can dive into something like that, learn quick, and see things. But I also like that, at least from face value, she's listening to people, wanting to hear their responses and their feedbacks, and wants to address it. It could be what some people theorize of being just PR, or it could be legit. I know for myself, I had tried to get leadership positions in jobs a lot, so many times, like how to apply to assistant managers and supervisor positions, because I have experience in some leadership capacities. Now I didn't have on my resume, I was the supervisor or the manager or the assistant manager, but again, like I've had experience though in those kind of things. When I worked for Best Buy, the first time I worked for Best Buy, I got a lot of growth opportunities, where I kind of, if I had stuck around a little bit longer, I easily would have probably been the supervisor, because I was putting myself out there, learning so many different things, got so many different opportunities, where I got to go to special trainings that generally only supervisors and managers go to. But I, at that time, was also diving into learning how to be an entrepreneur, starting up my own business. I was running my own chocolate business at that time. So I was learning about all kinds of different things when it came to what does it mean to own a business. And even in that same kind of thing, mindset of how to treat employees. I was reading a lot of different business books, like Rich Dad Poor Dad. If you ever haven't read it, it's a great book. It's great in teaching you a lot of, balancing finances and building more of an entrepreneur mindset. I read that when I was in high school, when I was taking a business class, and then I was reading it again when I was wanting to start my own business. I read was it 21st Century, something about building a business or something like that. It's the second book by the author Kiyosaki, who made Rich Dad Poor Dad. But I was learning all these different things and then applying it when I worked at Best Buy, and that was getting a lot of attention. But so even though I was trying to apply for these positions, I would always get turned down because I didn't have any position. I didn't hold any position with that title. So even though I had experiences to a level of degree, because I didn't have that on my resume, I wasn't getting it. It wasn't until I became an esports manager that I suddenly was being looked at for management positions, and it took was putting on my resume esports manager, and also part of the esports committee that rebuilt my university's esports program. That suddenly that allowed me to start getting interviews for management positions, and it's kind of wild.
Xbox employees worry she'll force AI into everything Xbox does, but Sharma was clearly ready for that reaction. As monetization and AI evolve and influence this future, we will not chase short-term efficiency or flood our ecosystem with soulless AI slops.
So again, this makes me think of like the problem of Call of Duty, right? So Call of Duty uses in a lot of cases, AI slop. It's not really good artistic designs. Again, the six fingered, um, zombie Santa Claus comes to my mind. And it's just super disappointing seeing that some of that stuff. But we also have to realize and recognize that AI is a tool. It's going to be here. It's the same, like the attack that AI gets is the same attack that Photoshop got back in the day. When Photoshop was first coming out, so many people were fighting people for using Photoshop. I get that now for using AI. Even though the concepts and the ideas are mine and some of the artwork is mine, I still get a lot of attacks because of the fact that I'll also use AI to enhance the picture or whatever. So, for an example, again, as a lot of you know, I love playing Halo. I play Halo a lot. I took my Spartan from Halo Infinite, and being going to school in Utah, I had always had this idea of like wanting to have a picture of like Master Chief or some kind of Spartan in the famous Utah Arch. And so, because I don't have a picture of the Utah Arch, I did what you would do with Photoshop. Got the picture from Chat GPT. Say, chat, like, and get me a picture of the Utah Arch. And then I took my picture of my Spartan and I was like, all right, chat, put this picture together for me. Thanks. got that picture, and then from there, I enhanced the picture on my own, utilizing my techniques with photography, made it look really cool. And then I had posted it in a group chat, and I got a lot of lip because they're like, oh, first they're like, oh, this is cool. Did you use Photoshop? And I was like, oh, no, not exactly. Like, I did edit the lighting and this and that and that and this. Um, but I did use AI to combine the pictures. And then suddenly people came unglued. They're just like, what the heck? Like, and I'm like, what? Like, it's my pieces of art to a level of degree. Like, it's the same thing if I did use Photoshop and I did take these two pictures, and I put them together. Like, what's the difference? Oh, the difference is because right now I'm using AI. It's a tool. Like, the same thing happened with cameras. When when cameras were becoming a thing, people were attacking cameras saying that's not art. Taking a picture of something is not art. Like, we're always going to have this fight when it comes to technology. It's a tool that helps a process. In game development, it helps so much in cutting down time to develop a game. Sure, if you're not using an artist to create the picture, then it makes sense. When you have an AI creating a six-fingered zombie Santa Claus, there's a problem here. That would fall in the line of AI slop. But so many people are just so anti AI that it's to the point where it's unreasonable. AI is a tool. It helps speed up the process of game development. It cuts down that time, so you're not having to wait 6-7 years for a game. I mean, let's be real, guys. If you're an Elder Scrolls fan, you understand what it's like to be waiting for a game where, was it 2017 when we got the teaser? It's now 2026, guys, and we still have not Elder Scrolls 6. We're starting to feel like those who were big GTA fans.
Said Sharma in her memo. Games are and always will be art crafted by humans and created with the most innovative technology provided by us. I was watching some reactions over the weekend of people seeing Sharma was appointed and reacting to who she is as a person. And it's all pretty negative until they see her speak on stage. And I've seen a noticeable shift in tone as soon as they recognize, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. I understand why this person could be appointed CEO. Now, I've also been digging into a story, a deep dive on her career and where she came from, so we can better understand where Xbox is going. I'll give you a sneak peek right now. When she was...
This is where they kind of point out her background and why it will make sense why she was appointed to her position.
Still under 18, she founded two companies. These are charitable organizations. One was the A-List, a youth center in Minnesota that was mentioned by Obama. The other I wasn't able to find details on. She went to SC Johnson, where she ended up getting marketing and business experience. She would then intern at Microsoft in 2011. So she's around 22, 23 at this time. She met Craig while she was there and just made him the chief of staff at Xbox. She went to Porch as COO, and she took that company into the stratosphere, so to speak, getting them everywhere that they possibly could. How did she do that? Calling reporters, talking to them, building relationships both internally and externally, and I think we start to see more of that from her in the near future. She would then go to Meta, where she worked on the messaging tools, and she was trying to make Messenger a competitor to something like Discord, getting app integration with stuff like WhatsApp and other applications that if you have international friends, you might recognize are very much warranted. Of course, there's the Instacart conversation. She was CEO 2021 to 2024. She got the gross merchandise value up to $30 billion over there. And a key quote in her interview with the Minnesota alum, I have a fundamental belief that technology can solve some of society's most difficult challenges and create economic opportunity in the process. She's the board member at Coupang. That is a Fortune 500 tech company in South Korea. It's one of the largest e-commerce companies delivering commerce content and financial service at a massive scale. She's also a board member at Home Depot. That relationship was likely cultivated because she had a good relationship with Lowe's while she was working at Porch. Porch, if you don't know, is something that those companies use to communicate better with customers. And now she is at Microsoft. She's been at Microsoft from 2024 to 2026. She was the president of the core AI product, and she is now the Xbox CEO. I'm going to make a whole separate video about that, but I just wanted to give you a real quick rundown of who she is and where she comes from as I am developing that story. Some Xbox employees worry she'll force AI into everything Xbox does, but Sharma was clearly ready for that reaction. We covered off on this quote. The other concern is that she's been appointed by Nadella as some kind of executioner of the Xbox console. Her memo doesn't suggest that, and Microsoft could have easily appointed Matt Booty into that kind of role to push game publishing instead of the Xbox console. I get the impression from sources that Microsoft wants a turnaround and is worried about losing Xbox as it's one of the only remaining successful consumer brands. I have to agree, if they just wanted to shut down Xbox, why would they go through the trouble of appointing Sharma right now when we've seen the 30% console declines, we've seen the repeated revenue challenges that they've had. They've had this whole problem. Why bother? Just shut it down. Pack it up. If they wanted to do it, they could have done it that way. They could have appointed Matt Booty to do it. They could have had Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond just radically change what the brand is going to be. I don't know why they would bring in somebody new with a track record of massive successes and getting products in front of people and people interested in those products. I don't know why they would suddenly appoint her to destroy the brand. Those who know Sharma better describe her as enthusiastic, willing to learn, and very capable of getting teams to execute on a clear vision rather than coming in as a product executioner. She also has a history at Instacart and Meta of overseeing platform launches and getting people to use products, the type of user acquisition that Xbox has failed at in the recent years. A completely warranted criticism, and it will be interesting to see what she does. Look, I'm trepidatious.
I do. So, hang on. So I do think that that the reasoning for why she's being appointed in the position is because when you look at her credentials, she has a history of helping companies succeed. Xbox is struggling. Xbox has been struggling for a while, and things just get worse. So if you have someone who has had a history of making things work, making things be successful, why not bring them in? Because your current person is not doing that. Rather your current person is making that same blunder of when the Xbox was the ultimate living room accessory. And then, again, we don't know. We're not hearing from firsthand sources of what it was like working with Sarah Bond. I do think that it was a blunder for making that push of Xbox being everywhere. And then the whole idea of kind of stepping away from exclusives. If you haven't checked out Ink TV does a talk on this. Ink TV is against the idea of bringing back exclusives. And I listened to his argument and everything, and in some cases he has a point. For the longest time, for those of us who kind of grew up with the Xbox console, the PlayStation console, and everything else, for those of us who grew up with these consoles, we've all been in those camps. I'm an Xbox fan, I'm a Sony fan, I'm a Nintendo fan, whatever. And people don't normally cross lines for various different things. Like some do, but not a lot. For myself, I am an Xbox fan. I love Halo. That's my go-to game. Halo is what got me an Xbox. My introduction to Halo was Halo 2. But I do think that in some cases, yeah, we could port games over. And I talked about this as an example to when Ink made his argument on this. I did give my take on it, that I do think there are games out there that we can drop those barriers. And the example I gave was Sea of Thieves. I was a big Sea of Thieves player. I did enjoy playing it. I had a lot of fun, but I also got bored, and then I had left. And then the seasons got introduced, and they introduced like the factions and everything, the trading companies, and I came back for that. Then I played that for a while, and then eventually I think it was like season 12 or something like that is about the time that I started getting bored again, and I left. And I've tried to come back a few times, and it's been hard, but it's a game that has, I would say, has hit its peak. People, if you haven't played it already, then you probably, the chances of you playing are probably very low, because there's probably a reason why you haven't. If you left Sea of Thieves like me, and you haven't gone back, there's probably a reason why you haven't gone back. And so there's not a lot you can really expect from Sea of Thieves at this point that's going to be a big wow, that's going to suddenly bring people back that stepped away, bring people back in that haven't played, that are from PC and Xbox. And so it's a game where it's like, okay, it's kind of at its peak. If we want this game to continue to flourish, we need new players. Where can we get that? What's untapped? PlayStation. So it's a game that made sense to bring it across the barrier and say, hey, PlayStation, come play. If they were to have done that with the Master Chief Collection, that would have made sense. But Halo in itself, it was a game that to me, it didn't make sense to not have a red line. Like, in one hand, I could see the Master Chief Collection being like, all right, let's make an exception for this game. It's a, kind of a complete game, 1 through 4. It's got multiplayer and all this other stuff. It's that peak. It's, like, people have left. We're doing other things. We've moved our teams off. It's kind of getting some updates here and there, but not really. It's not a priority. So it's a game where it's like, hey, like, let's just port it over to Sony. Like, let's get some new blood on there, because then it's like, hey, you guys have always wanted to play Halo. Here's your chance. Now that you've enjoyed it, now that you've had your fill, if you want more, come pick up an Xbox for the next Halo game. But that's an idea from there. Then they announced the campaign evolved. I'm like, wow, the remake of the remake of the remake, because that's what we need. It's like, and then they're like, yeah, this game is gonna be on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation, and it's just like, why? But that's a game where it's like, it's just the campaign. So it's another one where it's like, all right, well, if I were to want to be very tactful with this, I would be like, all right, now that you've played Halo 1, come over here to Xbox, pick up an Xbox, and play Halo. Come over here. Like, because the thing is that, so Inc. is like, exclusives are the old, it's time to drop these barriers, but the way I look at it is like, well, then what's the point of buying a console, right? Why have a PlayStation and why have an Xbox? Like, let's just have one console that plays both PlayStation games and Xbox games. There's no point in having a separate console. Like, tell me why I should buy an Xbox when I could go play a PlayStation, because you're going to be porting those games over to the PlayStation, right? Because, like, let's be honest, how many games has Sony sent over to Xbox? We got Helldivers 2. Cool. I can play with my friends. But what about Spider-Man? We're giving them Halo. Is Sony giving Xbox Spider-Man? Because, and I pointed this out to him. I was like, look, when you go buy an appliance, what makes you buy the oven that you buy, the fridge that you buy, the washer or the dryer that you buy? What makes you decide on the TV you buy? Because there's lots of TVs out there, there's lots of washers, there's lots of ovens, and all this other stuff. It comes down to either you are a brand loyalist, you started out with a Samsung or an LG, you're going to stay with Samsung or LG. If it's a TV, you probably were a Sony fan or an LG fan or a Samsung fan. or it's because you looked at the specs and you're like, well, this stove, it's got not just a top oven, a bottom oven, but it even has a warmer. I could keep things warm for when I have Christmas dinner. It's got this burner, like, a half dozen burners on here. Like, this is cool. I can control my oven with my phone. I'm about to pull into the garage. I can go into my phone, open up my app, and start preheating the oven. Like, for some people, it's those fancy specs. Others, it's the price. Well, this oven is cheaper than that oven. When you look at the TV, as a home theater specialist, this is what I would point out to people for a TV. I would point out the color. I'll be like, check this out. See how the black looks black? Look how vibrant these colors are compared to that. Doesn't it just look dull and boring and gross? Like, I would point out to these different colors. I even have put movies on there. I'm like, check out this movie. Check out Batman. Like, look how cool Batman looks on this Sony TV compared to this Samsung over here. When I did audio, when I displayed like the audio for home theater, I did the same thing. I would put on Viking metal. In fact, because it's a store, I would put on Disney metal, and I'll be like, check this out, as I put on, like, what would I play? Moana, and Frozen, and there was what I'll Make a Man Out of You. Phenomenal songs in metal to play on your home theater system. And so I'll play it, and I'm like, check this out, isn't this awesome? And I would sell the heck out of Sony products. Like, so when it comes down to it, you got your Xbox and you got your Sony. Well, if all the Xbox games are being moved over to Sony, why would I want to buy an Xbox console? You got to have exclusives. You have to have them. Now, not every game needs to be an exclusive. Like, don't get me wrong, but you need to have some things, because you got to have something to be like, yeah, I want the Xbox. Yeah, I want the Spider-Man, so I'm going to get that Sony. I love me some Spider-Man. Like, I love me some Halo. Give me that Xbox. So, I can see where there's going to be that reset. And we're going to go back to what made Xbox Xbox. Why Xbox? I don't think they'll fully pivot away from putting games over the PlayStation, and I don't think PlayStation will fully move away from giving some games to Xbox, but there needs to be the red line. There has to be a red line. You can't just thrive on a system that doesn't have a red line. It just doesn't work. So, yes, in some ways I do agree with Inc., but in other ways I'm like, no. Like, you gotta have something, because otherwise it's, why should I buy the Xbox? It's the same thing with cameras, right? If you buy a point and shoot camera, you're stupid, because it's the same kind of camera function you're gonna get on that is what you get on your phone. Like, that's how great we've been getting with cameras on phones, because at this point, what more can you do with a phone other than improve the camera on your phone? If you are really big and serious about photography, then no, you should not be using your phone. You should be using a DSLR camera. That's not a point and shoot camera. That's the fancy cameras. You change out the lenses, and that's what you should be using for your photography. Not the phone, but that. This is when you're like at the amusement park and you're like, oh, that's cool. I want to take a picture quick. Or if you're one of those people like, I want to take a picture of my food. Like, the DSLR is the one where it's like, I want to take a picture that's phenomenal, and it's going to get everyone going, ooh, ah. So, anyways, that's my take on that. It's my thoughts. When it comes to the red lines, bringing back red lines, I don't know if we will see those return. There is, check out Ink's thing. Ink did a talk on that. There is I guess a point where someone had reached out to Asha and was like, hey, like, we need exclusives, bring back exclusives, and she responded back saying, I hear you. So does that mean we're getting exclusives back? Who knows? it could be. I think we do need him back, and I 100% believe that that red line should be on Halo. You want to give Halo campaign evolve to Sony, then hey, use it as a lure to bring Sony players over to Xbox. Be like, now that you've played some Halo, come over here and continue the fight. Other than that, I'm intrigued to see where Asha will be going with Xbox. I do think that she could be the next Phil Spencer in fixing Xbox and putting it back on track where it needs to be. I think that some of her background and expertise will be a pivotal role in that, and I believe that's where the CEO of Microsoft is banking on, and I do I do see that. Another, I think even Inc. talked about this a little bit. I don't remember on the top of my head, but if it is true that a lot of people were headbutting with Sarah Brown, I could also see why that probably was why she was passed over, if she was passed over. Because why would you want, if you cared about the, and I mean, we are talking about Microsoft, but let's say that, you know, if we put the Sigma out onto the back, if you care a lot about your company, its growth, its thriving, its reputation, its reputation, then you're not going to want someone who's toxic in leadership. You're going to want someone who can get along with people, has a very good attitude, and is going to overall hopefully do really well. But again, we don't know 100% if those things are true about Sarah Bond. At least I don't know, so I'll take it at face value for what it's worth. If you have any comments or ideas or of your take on things, feel free to leave a comment below. I do apologize, this was a little bit longer. I just thought that this was really interesting. If you are curious about finding more, listening to more about what they have to say, you can find Dustin on his channel, Dustin, and the channel, the video itself. If you want to review it, it's Bombshell: Why Xbox Pushed Sarah Bond Out. Tough to work with, insiders claim. But other than that, thanks for being here. Give this video a like and comment below your thoughts. Love to hear it and look forward to seeing what your response is. Have a great rest of your evening, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.